Hey, homeschoolers, do you have a strong willed child? If so, you're blessed. Strong willed kids are world changers. You have the opportunity to raise a leader, but you're also tired. It's exhausting to homeschool strong willed kids. I know, I've raised three of them. In this episode, I want to share 3 keys to saving your sanity while homeschooling one or more strong-willed kids. But first, I'd like to thank my sponsor, the Route 60 movie. Now, what is the first step back to sanity with a strong-willed child? The first is to limit opportunities to rebel. These kids feel compelled to rebel, especially when there is no good reason for a rule. They will ask you why there's a rule, and they will know immediately when you haven't thought it through. They can smell it like blood in the water. I asked my strong-willed child who was in middle school at the time to complete an independent art curriculum. He said, "Why do I have to do an art curriculum? I don't like art. I'm not going to do art. Why do I have to do it?" And my answer was, because I had to do it. And in that moment, I knew I was sunk, and he did not have to do the art curriculum. A poorly conceived rule is not a license for your child to be disrespectful. I want to make that very clear. But your child feels he can't respect himself for following a nonsensical rule. Before you bristle at that, realize that you, your spouse, or both of you are probably also strong-willed. I find that homeschoolers in general tend to be strong-willed people. You too may find it very difficult to follow arbitrary rules, even when we are called by God to respect authority, especially our parents. So, what are we to do? We want to limit our rules to the essential ones. I can't tell you what those rules are, but they are likely connected to safety and your family's values. The rules to take a second look at are those your child rebels against the most. My clinical supervisor, when I started my practice, said that if a child is consistently kicking at a fence or the boundary, it may be time to expand that boundary. Spend time in prayer and discussion with your spouse about which rules are essential. Then eliminate the others and make them principles instead. Let me give you an example. Perhaps it's important for your family to limit your kids' sugar consumption. So you have a rule that you have just one dessert per week. Your strong-willed child is regularly upset about this rule. You could decide to make limiting sugar intake a principle in your family and not a rule. That way, if the opportunity to have a second sweet in a week comes up, you won't have to deal with a defiant kid. When it's a teen who is our strong-willed child, we have less defiance likely when we operate from a coaching model of parenting. This means that we're less about rules and more about helping our child anticipate consequences of choices and learning from them. After limiting rules, the next step for homeschooling a strong-willed child is to provide a challenge. If these kids don't have a constructive challenge, we shouldn't be surprised when they challenge us. They're built for challenge. It's like keeping a racehorse in a stall. He will be restless and aggressive. There are 3 easy ways to challenge our kids. The first is to allow them to compete. Competition is a great way for these kids to learn and grow. Even if you're someone who doesn't like competition, your child will likely benefit from it. Sports, games, and even self-competition are useful for redirecting your child's energy. Just about anything can be turned into a challenge. Search for the subject of your choice and the word challenge online, and you'll have more ideas than you have time to implement. I used this effectively with my strong-willed kids with learning math facts, with memorizing the names of countries, and with completing chores in record time. Next, provide your child with leadership opportunities. These kids hate being controlled and love being in charge. Have your child supervise younger siblings. If they are too harsh, you have the opportunity to teach. Give them the chance to teach a subject themselves. Many strong-willed kids love this, whether it's at home or as part of a co-op. Finally, we can challenge strong-willed kids by giving them a passion project that seems too big for them. If it's something they're excited about, but it's a stretch goal, they'll be too engrossed in the project to quibble with you about rules. Have them start a business, publish a book, plan a trip, or study for a licensing or college credit exam. Becoming an apprentice to someone they admire is also a great way to redirect their energy. The final step to homeschooling a strong-willed child that I'll share with you today is to love them passionately and unconditionally. Many of these kids know that your life is much easier dealing with the easygoing, submissive child. They wonder if you love them less, but they don't feel able to change. They also want your affection and approval, but they're unwilling to be vulnerable enough to admit it. So just assume that it's true. Express your appreciation and approval for your child's God-given gifts and even for her strong will. God created your child this way and will use them for His glory, especially when the child has a relationship with Jesus. The best way to encourage that relationship is to be like Jesus with them. Encourage and give physical affection whenever possible. Also, show love for your child by not ignoring disrespect, disobedience, or immoral behavior. It's easy to let things go in our fatigue, but the strong-willed child knows that discipline is love. He won't like it, but he will respect it. Continuing to discipline makes it more likely you'll have a good adult relationship with your child, not less. When we limit rules, provide a challenge, and consistently express love for our child, we will have the best chance of having a happy, strong-willed homeschooler. To find the link to my sponsor for this episode, the Route 60 movie, and the show notes, go to homeschoolsanity.com/strongwill. Have a happy homeschool week.